Welcome back, as promised, part 2 of the French Revolution, Oversimplified.
Yeah, if you've not checked out our part 1 reaction, then be sure to. I'll leave a link up there at some point. That was great to watch. It was actually shocking as well.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Didn't realise that kind of stuff went on that badly. It was just like all the peasants were being forced and made to work, give up literally everything they did in life to serve the greedy.
The working class and the upper class, the gap became absolutely huge, didn't it? From virtually nothing to eat and being taxed so high,
tax on everything.
Tax on everything, yeah. And basically the royals of the country just living the life of luxury.
They were living like kings and queens.
Well, exactly.
Precisely. I don't know. But as always, Oversimplified channel brings it down to earth. He narrates it and tells the story such a simplistic way enough. It's very gripping and very understandable at the same time. So it's great stuff. So now, we've got to go into this second part.
Part 2.
Should we go for it?
Let's take a look.
King Louis and his family were now in the Tuileries Palace in Paris, where for the next couple of years, he watched as the revolutionary government began to strip away his power. And fearing for his safety, he had to stay on their good side. Hey, look who it is. It's my favorite revolutionaries. Yep, I'm your #1 fan. What can I do for you? Hey, King Louis. So we've made a few decisions. First, all of your friends in the nobility are going to have to pay taxes the same as everyone else. Great idea. I love it. And as a side note, the tax money can no longer pay for all your lavish parties. Great. I hate those parties. They're so awkward. And also, we're taking away your Porsche. Oh, come on! I mean...
Great.
Yay. The king continually found demand after demand being made of him to prove his support for the revolution. On one occasion, a mob would invade the palace and demand he wear the revolutionary bonnet. This is the face of a man who is definitely pretending he wants to wear that bonnet. Now around here, I want to mention that one thing King Louis had a problem with was people constantly raiding his palace. But one thing he didn't have a problem with was raiding noobs on this video's sponsor, Raid Shadow Legends. Raid Shadow Legends is a brand new collection RPG game with amazing 3D graphics, an awesome storyline, and giant boss fights, all free to play on your phone. There's over 400 champions for you to collect and customize, and crazy battles and events that will get you hooked immediately. You can find me in the game under the nickname Oversimplified, and if you're quick enough and cool enough, you can join my clan. Go to the video description, click on the special links, and you will instantly get 50,000 silver and a free epic champion as part of the new player program to start your journey. Good luck, and I'll see you there. Now, where was I? Oh yeah. Seeing the situation rapidly turning against him, the king decided it might be a good idea to leave France and mount a campaign to retake his country from abroad. Luckily for him, he was married to an Austrian. So on the night of June 20th, 1791, the king and his family disguised themselves as servants and attempted to flee to the Austrian Netherlands. The royal carriage made a stop in the town of Varennes, and the postmaster there was like, "Hey guys, what's up? Where are you off to? We are but a collection of inconspicuous servants heading for the border for no particular reason at all." Say, you, the fat one, you look kind of familiar. Aren't you the king? Nope. Let me see your passport. It says here you're King Louis the 16th. Nope, not me.
Busted.
Take him away, boys. The king was promptly returned to Paris, but now the jig was up. His lack of support for the revolution was clear to all, and many considered him a straight-up traitor who tried to abandon his people. As a result, the new constitution of 1791 completely reduced his powers to that of a simple figurehead, a constitutional monarch. However, radicals, such as those in the Jacobin Club, were outraged that the king wasn't to be removed entirely. So a month later, these radicals staged a protest on the Champ de Mars, calling for the king's removal. The government of Paris feared an insurrection was mounting, and they sent the military to disperse the crowd. The confrontation escalated and resulted in the Revolutionary National Guard firing on a crowd of revolutionaries. It was a massacre. The incident exposed a deep division within the Brotherhood of the Revolution. On one side, the moderates who wanted to keep the king as a figurehead. On the other, radicals who wanted to see the king deposed and heads roll. In the wake of the massacre, these radicals received a wave of support. And speaking of rolling heads, one form of equality the revolution introduced was equality in execution. This meant no more torturous drawing and quartering, no more inhumane hanging. They wanted all criminals, regardless of economic status, to receive the same penalty, a quick and painless one. Luckily, a man by the name of Dr. Joseph Guillotine had an idea. A
Guillotine
falls like thunder, the head flies off, blood spurts, and the man is no more. The guillotine, otherwise known as the National Razor. The guillotine made its debut in 1791.
How long does your brain keep thinking after you had
the writings of Marat and others continued to call for the execution of anyone suspected of working against the revolution. For him, this included some members of the clergy and nobility who had previously benefited from the cruel system of inequality that existed before the revolution.
In
many parts of the countryside, local lords had found themselves become a target. Sire, the peasants, they're revolting. Oh, come on, that's a bit harsh. Sure, they smell a bit, but I wouldn't say they're revolting. Oh, yes, I see what you mean. Increasingly, these French aristocrats began fleeing France to find solitude in other parts of Europe. And once again, fear began to take hold. The privileged classes of these foreign nations didn't like what they were seeing because they feared revolutionary ideas may spread to their own lands. The National Assembly, actually now the Legislative Assembly, feared that these nations may decide to attack. Then why don't we attack them first? No, you idiots, we're definitely not ready for war yet. Did somebody say something? France declared war on Austria in April 1792 and immediately got pummeled. It also didn't help that Austria's ally, Prussia, joined in the fighting. The Prussian Duke of Brunswick posted a letter warning the revolutionaries that if anything happened to the king, he would burn Paris to the ground. The Duke's letter proved to be a massive success in inspiring the people of Paris to do the exact opposite of what he intended. They were enraged by the threat, and on the 10th of August 1792, the tension in the city exploded, and a mob stormed the king's palace. Fighting broke out between the revolutionaries and the king's Swiss guard, with casualties in the hundreds. King Louis fled and took refuge in the chamber of the Legislative Assembly, where Robespierre and his radical Jacobins were gaining ever more power. Given the developing situation, the chamber decided to hold a vote. And in what some considered to be a second revolution, it was decided to suspend the monarchy entirely. King Louis XVI was now just plain old Louis, and he was sent to a prison cell where an eye could be kept on him. A month later, the newly established National Convention officially declared the French Republic, and society underwent a massive change. Enlightened ideas of democracy and equality were being implemented, but very quickly, these ideas seemed to become secondary to fear, paranoia, and a thirst for blood. The new republic began working to violently remove any semblance of the old royalist regime. The church became a prime target. Priests who refused to take an oath to the revolution were deported or arrested. A new state-sponsored atheistic religion named the Cult of Reason was created as a replacement for the Catholic Church. Notre Dame, along with many other churches, had their religious treasures destroyed and were converted to temples of reason. Even the Christian calendar didn't survive, as a brand new revolutionary calendar was soon introduced. Hey honey, I'm home. Yeah, whatever, jerk. Whoa, what's wrong with you? You forgot. Forgot what? Everything. This entire year. My birthday was on the 3rd of Germinal, our anniversary was the 12th of Thermidor, and you promised that in Frimaire, we'd go on a romantic weekend trip to Venice. No, I said we'd do that in December. December hasn't been a thing for years. The government of Paris, now under the control of the radical sans-culottes, began rounding up suspected enemies of the revolution and sending them to prison in the thousands. Naturally, a large number of those arrested were members of the clergy and aristocracy. As France's foreign enemies continued to close in, panic spread. Georges Danton made impassioned calls for men to defend the Republic, and tens of thousands of troops left Paris for the front lines. However, in their absence, Paris was left to its own devices. As enemy troops arrived in Verdun, the people of Paris feared that their crowded prisons were becoming a breeding ground for counter-revolutionary conspiracy. What would happen if the Prussians reached Paris and freed the aristocrats? Marat believed he knew what would happen. The aristocrats would enact their vengeance on the people. Fearing those they had already imprisoned, mobs descended on Paris's prisons. They broke in, and during the brutal September massacres, aristocrats, priests, and others were tried and executed on the spot. Even women and children weren't spared. With over 1,600 victims, word of the massacre spread across Europe. One British newspaper wondered, are these the rights of man? Is this the liberty of human nature? But there was still one man in particular that Robespierre and his radicals really wanted to see executed. Austria and Prussia pledged that after they defeated France, they'd return King Louis to the throne. Well, checkmate Austria and Prussia, because you can't return a man to the throne if he's already dead. Citizen Louis Capet was put on trial for treason. Obviously, he was found guilty, but his punishment was less certain. Many moderates wanted to simply deport him, but Robespierre insisted the revolution could only live if the king was dead. A vote was held, and by just one vote, Louis was sentenced to the guillotine. If you don't mind, I'd like to say a few words first. Gentlemen, I am innocent of everything of which I am accused. Wait, you're too loud. They can't hear me. Hang on, I haven't finished yet. Wait, dude.
Oh no, we're gonna miss him.
Cool. In her prison cell, Marie Antoinette heard the guns fire, signaling her husband's death. Before long, she would meet the same fate. Back on the war front, France...
I say I'm going to miss him. I mean, obviously, like I said, he was guilty of so many things. Like I say, he couldn't stay still. He was always running away.
The way they treated the people was beyond it, wasn't it? It just could not carry on.
Disgusting, weren't it? Really.
It's such a shame that they didn't just do like they did in our country, where we've got a monarchy and it's like tourists and that come over to see it. It's basic, that they sort of like respected quite well. If they'd have kept that there, you could imagine people come from all around the world to see, all the things that were destroyed, weren't there? Those churches and things were all changed.
Yeah, all changed.
What a history that we'll never ever be able to see again, which the French had. It's a shame of that.
Yeah, it certainly is. I just I didn't want to come across like he was doing good. I just the way that OverSimplified put it, he was quite funny, weren't he? Or, I don't know. He was, like I said, he got what he deserved. And it looks like now the Queen is, she's going the same way. So
that's it. Yeah, you've now got Macron, I believe, telling everyone what to do.
There's always someone, Kev.
There's always someone. They're all up in arms about it. But,
Justified all expectations and actually managed to push the enemy back. But then more countries joined the coalition against France, and it all went to pot again. What do we do? Conscript the masses. The National Convention introduced a conscription law, with each regional department having to meet a certain quota of men for the army. However, not everyone was happy with this new law. You see, while Paris was definitely a hotbed for radical revolutionary fervor, some of the regions outside of Paris weren't quite so keen on the revolution. Some were largely still conservative, still supported the church, and just didn't suffer from that much inequality before the revolution. So as the revolution turned increasingly violent and anti-Christian, many were outraged. Now, they were being conscripted to fight for the new republic they hated. That was the last straw. Counter-revolutionary uprisings erupted in a number of regions across France. Some would last for years, such as in the northwest, where a large-scale uprising was led by the Owls. Why were they called the Owls? Because their leader was named Jean Owl. Why was he called Jean Owl? Possibly because he could do a really good impression of an owl. Really? That's what we're going with? Owls? Just because this guy can do an impression of one? Hit him with it, Jean. Hoot, hoot.
That can't be real.
Yeah, okay, that's pretty good.
Please, no, seriously.
The Chouannerie uprising lasted all the way until 1800.
He's got a
In the summer of 1793, Toulon invited the British Navy over for some tea and crumpets, and then they asked if they'd possibly like to stay and occupy the city. Being an important naval base, this was a heavy blow to the Republic, who sent a relatively unknown young captain by the name of Napoleon Bonaparte to help stage the siege of the city. Toulon was recaptured by France in the winter, and for his service, Napoleon was promoted to the rank of Brigadier General. The most infamous counter-revolution, however, occurred in the Vendée region. Throughout 1793, revolutionary forces clashed with the region's Catholic and Royal Army. The Republic defeated the counter-revolution through cruel pacification. In particular, General Jean-Baptiste Carrier committed brutal atrocities. In one instance, he had thousands of civilians, priests, women, and children tied to ships, which were then sunk. Carrier would later be found guilty and executed. Back in Paris, the government was still dominated by moderates. With the war going badly, revolts in the provinces, and the economy getting worse, it seemed the government just wasn't doing a very good job. Radicals' fear for the safety of the revolution intensified, and Marat even began calling for the moderates in the government to be executed. In return, the moderates called for the arrest of Marat. This led to a chain of events with the two sides in heated conflict. Robespierre declared the Jacobins to be an insurrection, and called on the people to arm themselves. It all ended on the 31st of May 1793 with the National Convention surrounded by radical sans-culottes and 29 moderate Girondin politicians arrested. From this moment on, the moderates ceased to be a political force. Robespierre and his radicals would be in almost total control of the government. And this brings us to the story of a woman named Charlotte Corday. Charlotte lived in the northwest city of Caen, and like many in the area, was horrified at the rapid radicalization and increasing violence of the revolution. And the man she blamed more than anyone was Jean-Paul Marat.
He gets
She
everywhere.
wanted to bring peace back to France, and so she did something drastic. She traveled to Paris and told Marat she had a list of enemies for him to publish in his paper. Marat
Okay.
eagerly invited her in for a meeting. So where's that list of enemies you promised me? Here it is. Wait a minute. This isn't a list of enemies.
Gee.
It just says Yippee-ki-yay, mother.
Yeah, there you go.
And
Knew
just
it.
like that, Marat was no more. Charlotte was quickly arrested and sent to the guillotine.
Oh.
Her dream of restoring peace, however, died with her.
Oh.
Marat became a martyr. In temples of reason, symbols of the dead Marat became the new crucifix. In death, he became an even more powerful inspiration for the extreme levels of violence that were
That
about to
backfired,
rip
didn't it?
throughout the
That
new
did well.
republic.
Wow.
That's right. Here comes the Reign of Terror. If you thought this revolution already sounds pretty violent, well, you ain't seen nothing yet, son. The radicals were now in control, and they believed not only was France surrounded by foreign enemies, but that within the masses, there were also plenty of internal ones too. Individuals not loyal to the revolution, conspiring to bring about its downfall. Robespierre and the rest of the radical faction were having none of it. A new committee of public safety was established with 12 members. Its purpose was to protect the new French Republic from its enemies, and it basically became a 12-man dictatorship with Robespierre as its leading voice. The Revolutionary Tribunal was also reinstated. A special court
almost like
created to
the royal
streamline
family
the process
back
of
again,
trying
wasn't it?
suspected
Like-
enemies
like a
and handing out
stand-in.
their death sentences. With these two new institutions, Robespierre wanted to scare France's enemies
Nothing
straight. In
diplomatic
September
about it, was there?
1793,
Not a lot, no.
it was announced that terror would be the order of the day. In other words, fear had become official government policy. And from then onwards, we enter into the period
It's not
known
what the
as
people
the
want.
Reign
No,
of
it's
Terror.
not a
Spies and
circle,
secret
really.
police were everywhere.
yeah.
And watch the people closely. France's public had to be extremely careful what they said and how they behaved. Obviously, criticizing this new system, or the government, would quickly have you sent off to the guillotine. But that's not all. Even the most minor offense could have you tried before the Revolutionary Tribunal. Hello, Citizen Martin. Hello, Monsieur Dubois. Monsieur? Did I just hear you say Monsieur? That's the old style of address, my friend. To the guillotine! You know what? I didn't like him, but I do feel kind of bad for the king and his family. Oof, expressing sympathy for the royal family,
I'll
are
bet.
we? To the guillotine! 12 sous for a loaf
You
of
had no
bread?
voice, did
That's
you?
way overpriced. To the
No.
guillotine! Man, this bread line is taking forever. To the guillotine!
It seems like something's come. It's not even just gone full circle. Like I said before, with the peasants,
It's
doing
another
what they did.
revolution
It's a
in the
new
revolution,
revolution
yeah.
now, but it's actually it probably looks worse. Like it's a certain death just for mocking or
It's-
any
yeah.
negativity.
Yeah, it's gone from a royal family to a tyranny that have just not got any democracy at all, isn't it? There.
That's the way I put it. No democracy. There's
yeah.
no rights whatsoever for anyone.
And in fact, they sounded worse than probably the king. I mean, he was just like tax everyone. This guy is like chop their heads off. It's easier.
Well, or certainly
that would
the
take
whole
all their
party
money.
of them,
Dunno.
if not just him. It's yeah.
Yeah, if you thought about becoming a thief and it was, if you get caught once, you lose your head, you probably
Or just slate
not do it, yeah,
slate
but-
somebody
yeah,
of
that's-
hierarchy, so to speak, and that's
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
Boom, you're done for.
Yeah, that's why we should fight to freedom of speech. Yeah,
Yeah, lack of big time.
definitely there.
And you look like you're thinking anti-revolutionary thoughts. To the guillotine. Max, we're sending way too many people to the guillotine. To the guillotine! Chop, 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 chop. It was insane. All across France, about 40,000 people were killed for suspected crimes against liberty. Let's say your neighbor won't stop mowing the lawn at 7 in the morning. Well, then all you gotta do is tell the government they've been talking smack about the revolution. And there's a good chance they'll end up in front of the Revolutionary Tribunal. Maybe they'll even be executed, taking a metaphorical load off your shoulders and a literal one off theirs.
You could just
The
lie
most
about it.
prominent victim of the Reign of Terror was a certain Marie Antoinette, who was finally tried and found guilty of treason in
Oops.
1793. She expected she'd be brought to the guillotine
Yeah.
in a royal carriage, fit for
I
a
bet she
queen.
went
All
dragged
the
there,
Republic
probably.
could provide for her, however, was a wooden tumbril. At 37 years old, the most hated woman in French history met her end on the 16th of October, 1793. Robespierre had saved the revolution through terror. Internal dissent was being suppressed. The food situation was no longer quite as bad. Even the French military had got its act together again and pummeled the Allies at the Battle of Fleurus. For Danton and his followers, the time was right to try to normalize the French Republic. Hey Robespierre, so we were thinking that since things are finally going better, maybe we should rein in the terror. And while we're on it, we could possibly start taking it easier on the church, and also try to end this costly war.
To the guillotine. Oh, there you go, yeah.
As time went on, Robespierre seemed to go, for lack of a better term, a bit mental. He was hell-bent on creating what he called a republic of virtue, and for him, this meant amping up the bloodshed even more. Throughout the spring and summer of 1794, executions reached an unprecedented level during a period known as the Great Terror. Even those closest to him found their way to the guillotine if they dared oppose his ideas and actions, and he began alienating himself from the rest of the convention. He created a new deistic religion called the Cult of the Supreme Being, along with the new annual festival.
He didn't think too much of himself, did he?
I think Robespierre is really starting to lose it. He thinks he's a god or something. Nonsense. Sure, he's gone a little extreme.
Someone's
but
gonna
he
get
doesn't
him,
think he's a god. My children, bathe your immortal souls in the virtue of my republic. Okay, yeah, he's completely lost it. Robespierre's ultimate mistake, however, came on July 26th, when he made a speech to the National Convention, in which he said this: I have in my hand a brand new list of enemies to be sent to the guillotine, and many of you are on this list, but I'm not going to tell you who yet. What do you think of that? I think we should send Robespierre to the guillotine first. All in favor? No. 2 days later, Robespierre became the final victim of the monstrous terror and paranoia he had created. Many historical accounts of the revolution end here with the death of Robespierre and his terror. But the revolution officially continued for another 5 years, until 1799. So what happened between now and then? Well, after the fall of Robespierre, a more moderate political group called the Thermidorians took control of the convention. They wanted to restore stability to the government. Now, Robespierre's allies and other radicals who had fueled the terror themselves became the target of political suppression. Bourgeois street fighters took on the radical sans-culottes in the streets during a period named the White Terror. In 1795, the Thermidorians drafted a new constitution and created a government called the Directory, with the purpose of preventing power from being able to fall into the hands of a single individual again. As this new government was being established, royalists who wanted to bring the monarchy back to France saw this moment as an opportunity to strike. They staged an insurrection in Paris and battled the National Guard in the streets. Luckily, one Napoleon Bonaparte happened to be in Paris at the time, and he took control of the situation, firing on the crowd and putting down the insurrection. From this moment on, the people of Paris would never again be able to stage a popular uprising and lost their control over the revolution. For his actions, Napoleon became a general and was sent to take control of the French armies in Italy. The new Directory remained a fairly ineffective government for the remainder of the revolution. It was plagued with corruption and struggled to keep the economy afloat, and as a result, wasn't very popular. For the people of France, with the strict social customs of royalist France
just
and
without the king and queen,
they didn't really know what to do with themselves. Men no longer removed their hats when talking to women. Different classes began intermingling, and a publication began circulating that looked a lot like a modern dating app. It was social anarchy. Outside of France, the war continued. In 1795, France took the Netherlands, where they set up a puppet state. Then they negotiated both Prussia and Spain out of the war. The British attempted to land French royalists in the west to reinforce rebellion, but that plan failed. In 1796, the French planned a three-pronged attack with the aim of marching on Vienna and knocking Austria out of the war. The two northern armies were defeated and forced to retreat. However, Napoleon in the south, with groundbreaking military strategy, won battle after battle after battle. He pushed the Austrians out of Italy and began closing in on Vienna. The Austrians freaked out, and Napoleon oversaw the signing of a peace treaty. He had almost single-handedly knocked Austria out of the war. And by the way, he was only 28. So maybe it's about time you moved out of your mom's basement. Napoleon became a famed hero among the French people.
Oh, I learned more
his
about
aspirations
Napoleon,
were
actually.
still higher. He briefly went off to Egypt and discovered a bunch of gnarly Egyptian stuff. But then the British destroyed his fleet and trapped his forces. Say, Napoleon, sir, you're not going to leave us here stuck in Egypt and return to France, are you? Nonsense, my boy. I would never dream of abandoning my loyal soldiers. Wow, what's that over there? On his return to Paris, Napoleon found himself to be extremely popular, and the government extremely unpopular, and he started getting some power-hungry ideas. Conveniently, a politician named Emmanuel Joseph Sieyès approached Napoleon and said, "Hey man, Since you're so popular, do you want to help me stage a coup? Great idea. Let's stage a coup.
Here we go
and then I'll
again.
coup you. What? Napoleon, with the help of his politician brother, entered the government chamber, possibly got punched in the face, and finally his troops intimidated the council to dissolve the government and create a new constitution that basically made Napoleon a dictator. So there you have it. The French Revolution, born with the great promise of liberty and equality.
Okay.
The common people dared challenge an oppressive system that had existed for centuries. But before they knew it, they found liberty sidelined by terror, equality that possibly didn't quite hit the mark, and an absolute monarchy replaced by an absolute dictator.
Yeah.
Napoleon began stabilizing French society. He restored the Catholic Church and got rid of that crazy calendar, among other
Yeah.
things. But he remained ever ambitious. He was France's first consul, but he slept soundly at night dreaming of being something even bigger. Napoleon's expansionist aspirations, combined with the ongoing conflict in Europe, would eventually lead the continent into a huge conflict known today as
The Napoleonic Wars.
Well, you would know a bit more about him, didn't you?
So they've done one about the Napoleons, wanting to become
The
an
should be
emperor.
one. Well, yeah, definitely want to cover.
Digging that music. Oh yeah, that's great stuff.
Yeah.
I want to forget
didn't
it.
know
I
it was a
want to know
French
what that
song.
track is in there. Oh, that's
Yeah.
good. Yeah, Napoleonic Wars. I do. I mean, the first time I ever, I still feel like I said this on an episode quite recently or something else. I watched the film Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure,
Yeah,
and they
yeah.
brought back Napoleon, didn't they, in the phone booth? And that's the first time I ever got to hear about
Oh, okay.
Napoleon. I was very young back then, naturally, but it'd be great to. I've got to watch that one now. It's got to be up there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, follow on from where they really just kept rolling along in their revolutions and ended up
Back where they were.
not really much better off. There's sort of
There weren't
lots
a
of-
lot of difference, was
not
it really? I mean, by the very end of it, yes, but throughout even 3/4 way through that episode, it felt like they were pretty much back to where they were. I mean, that whole, like, the terror part was like, could you imagine even trying to live in a world like that? You know, I know they joked about, like, just mowing your lawn. Maybe that happened, I don't know. Obviously, we're mowing your lawn with an electric lawnmower, but you could have been literally just gone to someone off power and said, oh, they said that. Oh, guillotine, done. With no
could
proof.
Well, a bit now. Obviously, yeah.
Probably did happen.
Probably did happen
at times.
I mean, yeah, there's some pretty bad things happen now just through word of mouth. So I'd imagine it could have happened back then. So there's no difference, is there?
So yeah, add anything down below in the comments. We do read them here. Other than that, if you're still here, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.
Catch you on the flip side.